Welcome back to the news today. We begin with breaking news out of Spain. According to exit polls, the country's Conservative People's Party of Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy won the general election, although it fell short of an absolute majority and will have to rely on other parties if it is to govern for another 4-year term. The PP is seen winning between 114 and 124 seats in the 350-strong parliament, 52 to 62 seats short of the 176 seats needed for an absolute majority. The opposition socialists are seen coming second with 79 to 85 seats, while newcomer Podemos would garner between 70 and 80 seats. And we move now to Israel for our daily debate. In a surprising move, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet secretary Avichai Mandelblit has been tabbed to become Israel's next Attorney General, with Yehuda Weinstein's 6-year term set to end at the end of January. The news comes as long-standing government minister Silvan Shalom announced his resignation today amid a sex scandal. Joining me to discuss are Dr. Hani Zubeida, chair of the Political Science Department at the Israel Valley Academic College. Good evening.
Good evening, Ayman.
Israeli lawyer Kobi Sudri. Good evening.
Good evening.
And diplomatic correspondent for the news today, Eli Hochenberg. Good evening, Eli.
Good evening, Ayman.
Dr. Zubeida, let's begin by why this is problematic, because he has been the cabinet secretary for some years now, and some people are saying, especially we heard today from the Meretz Party and the Zionist Union Party, that the Prime Minister Netanyahu is looking for a yes man in this job.
Okay, so Weinstein was also a yes man, but that's not the deal. The problem is with the committee right now. If we want to go for the protocol, there was a committee. The committee was chaired by the reigning chair of the Israeli Supreme Court, and according to the committee papers, they needed to submit 3 names. They submitted 1 name, and this 1 name was the name that Kunis did not agree to. So we have a chair of the Supreme Court which does not agree with the name. The only name that was submitted to the government probably will be elected because there are no other competitors, and as such we have an issue. The other issues are with the fact that he was the secretary of the government during the Netanyahu, and he's a personal nomination of the prime minister. Hence the question, which is, begged by the situation, why would the prime minister not see the close linkage between him and the Attorney General, and might it somehow infer into his position or into his way of looking at legal issues with the government? This is the current debate.
Well, this was the question that I wanted to pose to you, Mr. Sudri, because one of the main jobs of the Attorney General is to open inquiries into members of the Parliament and the government. Some people are saying that this would usher in an era of more right-wing leaning choices in opening inquiries. Is this the case?
Well, I wouldn't say it. I think that there might be a conflict of interests between his job as a Secretary of the Cabinet, which requires him to work very closely to the Prime Minister and to the other ministers. And now he's supposed to become the head of the prosecution, which means that he will be the authority to decide whether to open investigations and whether to issue indictments against politicians, the same ones that he worked so closely before. And this might be a problem. I wouldn't say that this is evident that he wouldn't be able to practice or to execute his job, but this might be a problem.
Well, Eli, this is not the first time the Prime Minister Netanyahu is dealing with some backlash following certain appointments. How big a crisis will this symbolize for Netanyahu, if at all?
Well, for Netanyahu, it seems that no crisis is lasting in the long run. It is definitely convenient for Netanyahu to have a yes man, as you said. But again, he had other posts previously of people that are supporting of him, and that he had no problem of telling them what to do, and it didn't raise the massive uproar. The thing here is, as Hani said, that the most the most important figure in this committee did not recommend him, this post. And this is something Netanyahu will have a difficult time to defend in the High Court.
Well, Hani, let's get back to you because, as you said and Eli mentioned as well, the main figure didn't recommend him.
Chief Justice.
How much do we know that Netanyahu had an influence on this choice?
Well, obviously Netanyahu had some influence on the process, but the thing is, this was a committee. This was a committee of an array of people, and they had to decide on 3 figures for the nomination, which will go into the government. It has to be said, the person we're talking about is a very respected legal scholar. He has his PhD, he's very well known, he shooted up the ranks in the military service. He was the head of the military attorney base, and now in the government he's working, and there are no questions about his positions. The only problem, as my esteemed colleague said, is the fact that he has close ties with the government personnel. Now the question is whether these close ties will have some influence on his position. I think that Gounis saw this as a problem, and he said, according to various sources, we should wait with him. Let this go away. And people are talking about a period of cooling between his current position and his next position. Right now, I don't know. I can't see the future. I will not say that he will be or will not be influenced. Right now, it has a bad flavor to it during the nomination process, and we'll have to wait to see how it unveils.
But Dr. Zubaydah is forgetting that one of the conditions was that a candidate should be supported by 4 members at least of the committee, and no other candidate got such a support.
Agreed.
So this what made him the sole candidate. Now the thing is whether the government should change this condition in order to discuss other candidates. Would it happen? No, it won't.
Or whether the pool of candidates should be different.
Unless the Supreme Court of Justice will interfere in the decision.
But we do have a very relevant example from today. Mandelblit has been sitting arm to arm with Silvan Shalom every week, and now if he will receive this post, he will have to decide about opening investigations about such things, and it is definitely problematic. People he has been working with every single day, and now he has to be a judgmental figure.
And this is more problematic than the Weinstein case, because you should remember Weinstein was a defense attorney. Mm-hmm. He, for instance, was defending Olmert, and when he got into the attorney general position, he obliged not to deal with Olmert's cases anymore. In Mandelblit's case, this is much more difficult because he was dealing with everyone, and he was kind of an advocate, not only a secretary, but also an advocate.
Well, are you worried about the future of the judicial system in Israel? Because we're always talking about separating the powers, governing power from the judicial power and so on. Does this signal a new shift where these lines are being redrawn?
Well, I think for a very long time that the job of the head of the prosecution should be separated and should be handled by a different official. Maybe this is a good opportunity to exercise it.
But we do hear politicians recently, and not veteran politicians, but new politicians, saying that we should run over the Supreme Court with a D9 because they didn't like this statement or another. So there's definitely a different status in the position of the Supreme Court in Israel, no doubt about it.
Well, let's talk about a little more about scandalous remarks and scandalous actions. Vice Prime Minister and Minister of the Interior Silvan Shalom resigned today. It was big news in Israel following repeated allegations of sexual misconduct
and the one
or
who was in charge on the
assault
negotiations with the Palestinians, by the way.
Yes,
also.
there were several women who accused him of this. We should say that none of them has so far filed an official report with the police. But just recently, Yinon Magal from the Jewish Home Party also resigned in light of accusations such as this. Hani, are we seeing a new era where politicians must resign, even if it is to save their own career, when allegations like this arise? Because in the past, they fought hard.
Yes, let me start with the disclosure. I know the minister Silvan Shalom. I know him personally. I've worked with him in the past, and we have been in touch on various occasions in the last decade or so. So this off the table. First, I think that we are in a different era. I think that the era of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and so on and so forth has completely dominated our life. If we spoke beforehand about somebody who said to a reporter and the reporter said that on the radio and so on and so forth, this is a whole different ball game. The minute it's out there, it's all over the networks and everybody knows about it. So the pressure is different. Now, let me add to that. I think even today, in the case that somebody feels that he is completely innocent, I think that he will fight to prove that there is nothing in all that much ruckus to say about. But I think in other cases, when evidence starts to pile, and it's not just one, it's not just two, it's not just three, and the numbers are running higher and higher, I think that politicians should consider what they did, because they would not be able to stand in front of them, the network vigils, because this is a completely different ballgame. It's a whole different arena. Everybody is a media holder. Everybody can say something. And we've seen that in the Inon Magal case, in the Silvan Shalom case, and we're going to see that in the future as well, I think.
And if I may add,
yes,
there is another fundamental change, and it's about the standard of behavior that is required out of politicians and out of officials in Israel. You cannot anymore do whatever you want. You can't speak the way you want. You can't treat especially women in not a nice way.
Well, is the legal system now more damning or more tough with public figures such as Silvan Shalom and now government officials when allegations like this arise? Because of course it gets exposed to a great degree in the media, as Dr. Zubeida just said, on Facebook and other social platforms. Is the judicial system, does it also have an interest to come down harder on figures like Silvan Shalom?
I wouldn't say come down harder. I would say that the public interest in checking and investigating such complaints is much bigger than in a case of an ordinary citizen.
Definitely, yeah. The exposure
and
is
it should
bigger.
be.
Because the pressure on the legal system is huge. There is no way they can oversee that. There is no way you're going to see an attorney general says, I'm turning my eye to the other side. There is no way that's going to happen, because if it will, he's going to be down there with him on the social network and getting all the heat. So they understand it's a different ballgame. And we should say, I don't know if Silvan Shalom did anything right now, allegedly. What we hear is allegedly. But as it seems from the social networks and as it seems from the number of women that are stepping forward, there is an issue here. I'm not so sure he needed to resign, but I think the pressure, mostly social pressure, was too big to handle.
But taking into consideration, the many sexual scandals within the Israeli police and the growing public pressure about this matters, as a woman, I have to say that the fact that women, obviously, many of them has several reasons why not to go to the police and give a very detailed testimony about what happened to them. But there is a problem with numerous cases. We hear allegations being brought up and nothing to back them on the ground, and the people, the public, the social media is already hanging the one to blame without a proper judicial process. And this is without a doubt a severe problem, and this is something I think that the entire society, Western society, is now exploring the boundaries between the public pressure and letting the judicial system do its work.
This is for sure a change for women in Israel. Yes. This is power for women. It secures women much more than in the past, and we can see a real change in Israeli society. This is not Israel of the 60s or the 70s of the last century. This is a whole new Israel.
Yes, but the simple fact that I can write a post on Facebook, whether from a political reason or whatever other reason, if it's not true, of course, and ruin someone's career, it's a case that must be addressed by the public.
Zubeida, one of the main concerns is after this is a good step for women in Israeli society, is whether this can be misused as a force by women.
Obviously. and it will be misused by women. But we have to remember, the major portion of sexual harassment complaints are legitimate. There is only a tiny portion of misuse of that practice. Now, the issue is here, whether we're allowing a small amount of misuse, insignificant small amount of misuse, versus a huge phenomenon, especially in Israel. Because I agree with Eli. Eli said that right on the money. We need to see other institutions in Israel, the police, the military, the government, other public officials. We have a disease in Israeli society. We've just heard about a legal court justice from Nazareth up in the north, who is going to be blamed for sexual harassment and indecent deeds. This is an issue, and the Israeli society needs to learn, whether through the legal system or through social sanctions, this is not allowed.
Yes.
Women are not
in order to
objects.
support those women, society needs to decide about proper boundaries in
Certainly,
order to give
this
them the
means
just
that
backing they deserve.
This potential misuse is only a small price to pay to secure women. Thank you very much for joining me for this debate tonight. That's it for us. The News Today is done for today. We'll be back here tomorrow from the Jaffa Port, same time, same place. See you then. Good night.